Now recognize Mr. Lahood from Illinois.
Thank you, Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses today for your valuable testimony and the conversation. And I just want to first acknowledge, since the Biden administration took office in January of 21, we've seen time and time again this administration prioritize social issues above all else. And the result of that has really been the disruption and the dismantling of many of the historic economic strides that were made in the previous administration. We had the best economy in my lifetime pre-COVID, partly due to TCJA and a number of the policies put in place. That's changed since the Biden administration came in. And so today's discussion, I think, is an important one as we better understand how the fixation on ESG activism by the executive branch and many U.S. companies is really leaving seniors and people that save money in the middle class and their retirement at risk. And I'd like to first concentrate on the corporate side of this issue and how the intense focus on ESG by companies can be misguided and unnecessary to the detriment of shareholders. I just read an article that I'm going to submit for the record here. It's an article written by Harvard Business Review in 2022 by Professor Sanjay Bhagat, who has been an active leader on this issue and highlighted the potential redundancy in businesses putting a particular focus on ESG. And what he says in this article is, quote, "In competitive labor markets and product markets, corporate managers trying to maximize long-term shareholder value should, of their own accord, pay attention to employee, customer, community, and environmental interests on this basis. Setting ESG targets may actually distort decision-making," unquote. What's more, this article goes on to cite an academic paper that found evidence that numerous companies have used an increased focus on ESG as a justification for poor business performance. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent to submit the professor's article for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Isaac, do you agree with the claim that ESG targets by companies distort corporate decision-making? And if so, do you see companies reconciling that distortion with what should be the primary objective, maximizing shareholder value?
Unequivocally, yes, and that's why there's this huge push and why it's being driven down. As you look at over 3/4 of the executives of S&P 500 have their compensation tied to ESG goals. Over 3/4 of S&P 500 company executives, their compensation is tied to ESG. That's why we're seeing the prevalence. This is why this affects so many, more than 4% of the people that have 401ks. It affects the entire economic prosperity of this country.
Thank you. And Mr. Rutledge, on the asset manager side, I appreciated your testimony. I'm sure this issue can be particularly challenging for managers who do work globally, given the strong focus on ESG investing within the European Union. Can you comment on this and maybe share what we could be looking at in the U.S. Were to trend more towards the current EU regulatory framework in the future?
Well, I sympathize with companies that work globally.
Mike.
Is this not working?
Just get
closer. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. I sympathize with companies that have to make investment decisions globally. The thing that gets missed in Europe is that for that several trillion-dollar slice of institutional assets that are in ERISA-governed plans, be they defined benefit or defined contribution, they're subject to the ERISA exclusive purpose rule and the exclusive benefit rule. Exclusive is a pretty strong word. It's been there for 50 years, and it's actually been in the code for 100 years. It's a very strong word, exclusive, meaning exclusive for invest the money for the participants in the plan. It's not the trustees' money, it's the workers' money. In Europe, they don't have, and frankly, even maybe at the state level in this country, because ERISA doesn't cover state-governed plans. If you're outside of a system that has that exclusive purpose rule or that exclusive benefit rule, then governments can have different perspectives. They can perhaps have rules that require investing in certain ways that don't maximize returns for some other purpose. So I very much sympathize. I would say in a way, we've already done what we can for our American pension plan participants in ERISA covered plans by having that exclusive purpose rule and exclusive benefit rule. I would just say our regulators should probably approach the companies that are caught in those crosshairs with regulators from, say, Europe, with some sympathy, not bring the hammer down too hard on them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.